Tonight on PrimeTime, European leaders are gathering in Brussels for a crucial summit as conflicts in the Middle East intensify and divisions over Ukraine funding deepen, placing pressure on the European Union's unity and strategy. So, what exactly can Europe agree on? Welcome to the program. I'm Andy Mioch. As European Union leaders meet in Brussels, conflicts in the Middle East and Russia's war in Ukraine are taking center stage. The bloc also faces opposition from Hungary, which is moving to veto a 90 billion euro loan to Ukraine.
European Union leaders have convened in Brussels for a high-stakes summit dominated by war and energy pressures. The meeting comes amid conflict in the Middle East, which has brought instability to the global energy sector as oil prices fluctuate. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said the US-Israel war with Iran would be a key focus of the meeting and called for the fighting to come to an end.
This morning we are seeing energy prices rising sharply across Europe and around the world. The main cause of this, of course, lies in developments in the Middle East. We will also be discussing this in detail. I want us to send a clear signal that we are ready to help. But for that to happen, the fighting must cease. I am particularly grateful that the US President sent a signal last night that he is also prepared to bring the hostilities to an end. However, this presupposes that Iran renounces its nuclear program, puts an end to terrorism, and is prepared to engage in talks. If all this can be achieved in the coming days, then we are moving in the right direction.
Also on the EU agenda is Russia's war in Ukraine. European Union leaders had earlier pledged to lend Ukraine 90 billion euros. The package is intended to help Kyiv plug a widening budget gap as it continues to fend off Russia's invasion. French President Emmanuel Macron called on the bloc to deliver on its promise.
We must first implement the loan of 90 billion euros that was decided last December. It is a decision that was taken by the heads of state and government. It must be implemented, and we must increase our military production capacities. That is what we have been advocating for months. We have put the instruments in place because we know that we ourselves, for our security, and the Ukrainians will need more and more European production in the current context.
However, Hungary's Prime Minister has vowed to block any pro-Ukraine proposal at the summit, accusing Kyiv of blocking oil supplies to Hungary from Russia via the Druzhba pipeline.
The Hungarian position is very simple. We are ready to support Ukraine when we get our oil, which is blocked by them. Till then, there is no any decision which is favorable for Ukraine will be supported by Hungary here.
Hungary is now under pressure from fellow EU countries to lift its veto, with EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas suggesting that oil supplies from Croatia could provide a solution.
Well, to help us understand what's at stake at this EU summit in Brussels, I'm joined now by political analyst Vlad Olteanu. He's joining us from Brussels. Vlad, very good to have you on the program. Thank you for joining. Let's start with the big picture. This summit comes at a time of obviously tensions in the Middle East and the Ukraine war going strong after the 4-year mark. What are EU leaders hoping to achieve over these 2 days?
Well, I think, indeed, I mean, the summit comes at a moment which is particularly important if one looks at the escalation in the Middle East. It also comes unusually near to another summit. So there was an informal and now a formal summit, very near one to each other. Ukraine, yes, indeed, Ukraine is a non-solved issue since December of last year. So it's a recoming subject on the agenda. What is, I think, very interesting for this particular summit is that the crises seem to accumulate. It's a fast accumulation of crises in the last few months. and definitely in the last few weeks, that the EU needs to address. Some of those the EU has addressed in the past. It is not the first time that EU has an energy crisis. The war of Russia against Ukraine brought the first energy shock. There were energy shocks before 2019, if we think about the Hormuz Strait. So actually there were previous situations of crisis, but in this particular moment, there are superposing crises. It's not one, it's a plurality of them. Each of one taken individually, I think the EU has the instruments to address them and address them in the past. All of them together, that remains to be seen, because it's not definitely not an easy situation.
Well, this latest crisis in the Middle East, we've just witnessed attacks on energy infrastructure, gas facilities, and so on. The Strait of Hormuz is virtually shut. How worried are European governments about the economic fallout of all of this?
Absolutely. And linking the first question to the second, what they try to achieve is exactly that, diminish that worry zone into a manageable economic rational pathway, let's put it this way. So worried about energy prices going up, that's for sure the case. Energy prices are going up. It's not only that they're going up, there is a high level of fluctuation on energy markets, be it oil or be it linked markets. If you look, for instance, at the LNG, so the gas, liquefied gas market, that went even higher than the oil markets, understandably so. All the other linked markets went also very up. So if you look at the cruisers, so the transporters of oil indexes, also they went up. So it looks like there is a crisis clearly coming, and it's probably not a crisis of a few days. It's probably a structural change to how the energy markets operate. Against that, the EU can do a number of things, and I think the EU is better prepared than it used to be when 2019 happened, or even when 2022 has happened, for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is that the EU has actually increased significantly its capacity on energy, on sustainable energy sourcing, and also has increased significantly capacity of production of energy by other means. However, there is a dependency on oil and there is a dependency on gas, even if reduced. And the reserves that the EU has currently are not very important. So it can face a crisis probably of a few weeks. It will be much more difficult to face a crisis lasting months.
Well, one might assume that there are these mutual concerns the Europeans might have, but there are also some very visible divisions within the European Union, especially when it comes to funding Ukraine. How much unity do you believe the leaders can show during this summit?
I think on the Ukraine question, the unity is there, with the exception of Hungary. And here there are two possible ways for the European Union, I think, because everybody else, one may argue, yes, Slovakia sometimes is partnering with Hungary. When Hungary vetoes, Slovakia follows. But at the end of the day, the key solution for the problem is not having a veto from Hungary. There are two ways to look at it. One of them is to accept the veto for now and basically wait for results of elections in Hungary, which are widely considered to be against the current prime minister, so with a change of leadership in Budapest. So that is one way, but that will mean that a concrete decision on the 90 billion, of the implementation of the 90 billion, would not be achievable before sometimes probably 3rd or 4th week of April. The other possibility is to issue short loans or short financing agreements and work with those short financing agreements to find a way to finance Ukraine in the meantime. A lot of the solution depends on how urgent Ukraine needs the money and how much money does Ukraine need urgently. But there is clearly unity. I mean, in December 2025, the 90 billion package was agreed. President Macron is right in saying that there was an agreement at the December Council on the 90 billion solution. So the problem now is not the agreement. Unlike Prime Minister Orban's position, the problem is not the agreement. The problem is the implementation of the agreement. And this is, well, as any agreement, if you signed to an agreement, not implementing or not agreeing to implementation doesn't make out of you a serious partner.
Coming up to this summit, we've heard some messaging by several leaders about the need of a defense clause. That one article the European Union has to be strengthened, to have more of a shine on it. Now, given the current circumstances regarding Europe's defense and security, would you say that those are just political messages or an actual start of a shift?
It is a very, very good question with deep implications. I personally believe, looking at how that was framed and when it was framed, I personally believe that that is much more of a structural change rather than just aesthetics or just a messaging about a projected force. I think the EU realized very much in the last 4 years. Since the aggression of Russia against Ukraine, but most importantly, since the return of President Trump in the White House for his second mandate, I think the European Union realized very clearly that being an economic power, being a power who supports financially many parts of the world, and who has an open trade, has bilateral agreements, the European Union has currently, let's see what the agreement with Australia looks like, which will be negotiated during this weekend actually, and the beginning of next week. But if Australia agreement will be signed, that will be a bilateral trade agreement number 83 for the European Union. United States has currently 20. So you can see the approach of the Union in terms of opening to the world in terms of trade. Well, it's so that all that openness doesn't mean a lot if you do not have a force, a military force, and a very clear possibility to show that you can act not only economically but also militarily should the need be. The increase in the defense budgets in the EU is absolutely monumental. In the last year, Europe agreed for this specific defense capacity, financing capacity of 800 billion euros. So I think that increase also shows that the EU is much more prone to actually develop a common force or a common defense mechanism to be able to project force in the world if that is needed. And that needs to be very credible indeed. It's not just declarations, it's capacity. As one very famous American general and Secretary of State, Colin Powell, said it, you need to be able to put boots on the ground. So clearly the Union is going into that direction.
And finally, Vlad, looking beyond these immediate crises, what can we realistically expect from this get-together in Brussels? Maybe some concrete decisions or merely signals of where Europe's headed in the near future?
I think on one hand there will be some decisions, notably decisions on the economic side of the discussions. So the leaders also discussed, for instance, the concrete measures to improve the functioning of the internal market and some concrete measures about economic direct action from the Union to support, for instance, energy markets, but not just energy markets. So on the economic side, I think it will be decisions time. On the Middle East, I think there will be an agreement. Let's see how wide that agreement will be. But I think there will be an agreement on assisting and helping the diplomatic efforts to actually end the current military situation as much as possible, because with that military situation going on, clearly the energy crisis will escalate. And with an escalation of the energy crisis, inflation, and a clear downgrade of the economic outlook is no longer a possibility, is a very high probability. And I think the leaders want to avoid that to the largest possible extent. On the last point, Ukraine, one decision or the other will be made. Even if the decision is made to postpone because of a Hungarian veto, there could be a decision on temporary loans or a parallel mechanism to actually ensure emergency financing to Ukraine.
We will see in the next day or so. Vlad, thank you so much for joining us and offering your analysis.
Thank you.
Now, after the break, we'll take a look at rising UN concerns that escalating regional tensions could threaten Syria's fragile recovery. Welcome back. You are watching PrimeTime. Concerns are growing at the United Nations over the impact of escalating regional tensions in Syria, with officials warning the country's recovery remains highly vulnerable. Here's more.
The United Nations has warned that escalating regional hostilities risk undermining Syria's fragile recovery. A spillover from wider conflict deepens security and humanitarian pressures. Briefing the Security Council on Wednesday, UN Deputy Special Envoy for Syria, Claudio Cordone, said debris from intercepted Iranian missiles and drones in Syrian airspace had caused civilian casualties.
Israeli airstrikes on Lebanon have claimed both Lebanese and Syrian lives and resulted in approximately 140,000 persons, mostly Syrians, crossing into Syria seeking safety. I reiterate our call in this context on Israel to fully respect Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity, adhere to the terms of the 1974 Disengagement on Forces Agreement, and refrain from any actions that could undermine Syria's stability and political transition.
Deputy UN Aid Chief Joyce Masuya said the influx was adding strain to an already critical situation. More than 100,000 people remain displaced in Aleppo and Al-Hasaka, while irregular electricity supply continues to disrupt water systems, hospitals, and sanitation services.
Syria is already experiencing the effects of the military escalation in the region. Falling debris from aerial projectiles have killed or injured several people and damaged property. Over 140,000 people have fled from Lebanon to Syria, most of them Syrian nationals. The escalation precipitated some planned returns for about 30% of those now arriving in Syria. They are joining the 1.5 million refugees who have returned from neighboring countries since December 2024. Some have indicated plans to return to Lebanon when the situation stabilizes.
Syria's UN ambassador, Ibrahim Olabi, accused Israel of ongoing violations in the south, citing repeated incursions, shelling, and raids affecting civilians, including children.
Despite the strenuous efforts made by the Syrian government to establish security and stability away from polarizations and bloc politics, Israel continues its grave violations in southern Syria through repeated incursions into the countryside of Quneitra and Dara. It sets up checkpoints and shell areas. It assaults citizens through raids and abductions that have affected even children while they were herding sheep.
Meanwhile, US Special Envoy for Syria, Tom Barrett, condemned Hezbollah attacks.
Syria and Israel are also taking steps to stabilize their relations and move toward peace, an effort the United States is supporting through a joint fusion mechanism involving our three countries. Well over 2 million refugees and internally displaced have now returned home, where they can contribute to the rebuilding of their country. As the holy month of Ramadan comes to a close and families prepare to celebrate Eid,
the discussions underscore the growing risk that regional tensions could further destabilize Syria as the country grapples with displacement, strained infrastructure, and a fragile recovery.
Well, to discuss the growing concern that regional tensions could further destabilize Syria, I'm joined now by UNDP consultant and professor of strategic studies, Dr. Nurhan El-Baya. She's joining us from Istanbul. Doctor, welcome. Very good to have you with us now. Let's start with this UN warning itself. Officials are saying that this regional conflict is already spilling over into Syrian airspace, that debris is falling down, causing civilian casualties. How serious would you say the risk is that this conflict might draw Syria back into instability?
This UN warning should be taken into consideration seriously, especially now we have to differentiate between two things in Syria's situation. Number one, the spillover, which is already occurring, it's not hypothetical at all. And the other thing, which is the systematic collapse, which it could be avoidable in Syria's case. What we can see now, what's happening in the region is definitely affecting a fragile country like Syria. Syria is fragile from all aspects, security, from humanitarian conditions, also infrastructure as well. So this country, despite the fact of the efforts and ongoing efforts supported by the international community like United States, Turkey, and also Russia to stabilize the situation in Syria, still it's not sustained and it's very, very, very fragile. Anything will happen, for example, like what's happening now in the region, this geopolitical situation or the geopolitical issues will affect Syria seriously. We cannot also, or I have to point out that what's happening in Lebanon is affecting Syria negatively. This influx, huge influx from Lebanon to Syria will affect the country also. We're talking here about a country suffering from very, very poor infrastructure. The electricity in Syria is only coming 4 hours per day out of 24 hours. So we are here adding a huge number of displaced people coming from Lebanon, and they are mixed between Lebanese citizens and Syrian refugees who already escaped in 2010 during the civil war in Syria. They are going back to Syria, to their home country, and they are saying that we have no place to go. Our homes just got destroyed during the civil war in Syria. So this will put more pressure in such a fragile system and country like Syria.
How can it impact this influx of people fleeing Lebanon to Syria? How can it impact this strained system that is in place currently in Syria?
Syria already suffering from lack of resources. Those resources, which as a combination will create the infrastructure. In a certain areas, especially like Aleppo, like Hama, like Homs, like Lazikia as well, those areas with a very poor resources, when we add this number of displaced people from Lebanon to those poor resource areas, this might cause tensions between people. Plus, I have to point out something. Syria already is suffering from internal displacement within the Syrian people as a result of the civil war started in 2010 till 2024. So this is another issue. So Syria is suffering from two types of displacements, internal and now as a result of the geopolitical situation in the region, external from Lebanon. So those people, where they gonna stay? The issues in water resources water pumps and electricity. How they gonna live? Who will solve it? The government still doesn't have clear structure or clear framework to solve this issue. That's why United Nations warned Syria to try to solve this issue, especially within or what's happening now in the region will add more and more problems and more issues in such a fragile country like Syria.
Doctor, with everything you've mentioned, the electricity shortages, water shortages, internal displacement, and now refugees, how vulnerable is Syria as a country to any further shocks coming from the region?
To understand the situation of Syria, we can just describe this situation as highly shock sensitive country with minimal absorption capacity. This is exactly how we can understand the situation in Syria. Syria has to put into consideration very well, carefully, and they have to know that they are in a high risk, especially being pulled back again to the war. We shouldn't forget that Hezbollah, which is now dealing with war, very serious war in Lebanon, they have still their group in Syria. And as the system in Syria, the security system in Syria is still fragile, this might lead to pulling the country back into instability. This is the first warning. The second warning, it's related to the country. It's already in a direct spillover. The airspace is already suffering from violations. Lots of civilians in Syria got injured, seriously injuries in Syria due to the missiles and due to the violations of Syrian airspace without taking any reactions or even any condemnations from the government as well, from the official Syrian government. Also, the humanitarian situation remains very severe. Still, Syrian people, especially those who got displaced internally because of the civil war, still their situation is very, very bad in terms of humanitarian situation, in terms of available shelters or even infrastructure, water, gas, electricity, housing. I'm talking about minimal and basic needs of any human being, any citizen. The country, the government supposed to provide their citizens with those basic needs. But unfortunately, still the humanitarian situation remains very severe. So we're now talking about displaced people influx from Lebanon to Syria, Iran, Israel, exchanging missiles and rockets and violating the airspace of Syria. Hospitals in Syria, they are suffering so badly with lack of medical supplements and medical suppliers. In such situation we are living, or Syria is living at now, they need a very well-prepared hospital with enough or sufficient
away from
medical suppliers.
These obvious problems on the ground, back at the UN, we were hearing some different narratives clashing. Syria accusing Israel of committing violations in the south. Then there was Washington saying that Damascus is distancing itself from Iran. When you hear all of these conflicting narratives, what does that tell us about the geopolitical landscape surrounding Syria?
This is another issue that Syria is facing now. especially after the ground troops operation in south of Lebanon. So the recent talks or the recent plans actually from the Israeli government, and they said this publicly, is to expand in southern Lebanon, which is to and to open those areas in southern Lebanon to the areas that they are already expanding in Syria, especially Golan Heights. So this is another risk Syria is facing now. Yesterday in the meeting in United Nations, the Security Council, they have mentioned this point and they highlighted this point clearly. And now the Syrian government supposed to start planning, actually not planning, to execute and to take some serious steps related to what's happening, because this escalation is going fastly, and all of a sudden Israel attacked Lebanon. They started the troop ground operation in only one day. They reached to not only Al-Litani River, they reached to Al-Zahrani River. Here we are talking about 50 kilometers away from the borders of Israel, Lebanese-Israel borders. So the expansion is fast. And the plan again to open that area with the southern area of Israel, especially Al-Golani Heights. So they have to take serious steps as the Syrian government.
And Doctor, given this, the speed of this escalation, do you believe that the international community has the tools and has the will to keep Syria from becoming another front in this war, or are we heading into a new unpredictable phase?
I don't think so, because now lots of fronts, they are operating. The front of Iraq, the front of Lebanon, already the original war between Iran and Israel and America. Gulf, yesterday in their meeting, they were warning that they will start activate the agreement, the defense agreement between the 6 Gulf countries, and they will be ready to defend themselves. So here we are talking about another front might be open. So now the world is busy, and all international community members, they are trying to avoid as much as they can. We also what European countries said to President Trump related to opening Strait of Hormuz. No country accepted. So now this reaction is very normal to avoid, each country to avoid itself to enter such a very complicated war, which also open to lots of fronts. So Syria might enter to join Iraq, to join Hezbollah in Lebanon. Still, the groups linked to Hezbollah, they are still in Syria. Hezbollah Iraq branch already joined. So definitely Syria might join this front, and this will add more and more risk and pressure in Syria's current situation.
Dr. El-Bayat, thank you very much for joining us and providing us with your insight. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much.
After the break, we'll take a look at the latest top stories shaping the headlines today. Welcome back to Primetime. Now, missile strikes and counter-strikes are now hitting major gas facilities in Iran and Qatar, raising the stakes in an already volatile region. With Israel, Iran, and Gulf states increasingly involved, the risk of a wider conflict is growing.
US President Donald Trump said late Wednesday that Israel carried out an attack on Iran's South Pars gas field. He stated that the United States and Qatar were not involved and had no prior knowledge of the strike. In a post on Truth Social, Trump also said he does not expect further Israeli attacks on that facility. He warned of escalation if Iran continues targeting Qatar. However, Iran immediately responded by launching missiles at Qatar's Ras Laffan industrial city. This area hosts the world's largest liquefied natural gas processing facility and is central to operations run by Qatar Energy. Qatar confirmed that rockets struck its main gas site early Thursday, causing fires and significant damage. Officials said 4 out of 5 Iranian ballistic missiles were intercepted, but 1 missile hit Ras Laffan, leading to extensive destruction. Qatar has called Iran a direct threat to regional stability and says it reserves the right to respond. Prior to the attacks, Qatar had evacuated key LNG facilities following Iranian warnings of possible strikes on Gulf energy infrastructure. Iran also issued evacuation warnings for energy sites in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Saudi officials say they thwarted an attempted attack on a gas facility. In Riyadh, 4 people were injured by falling debris. The UAE reported intercepting missiles that were heading toward oil and gas targets. Meanwhile, Iran launched missiles toward Tel Aviv, including ones carrying cluster warheads. Israel says its defense systems intercepted the attack. Israeli officials have accused Iran of repeatedly using cluster munitions, which release multiple smaller explosives and are harder to stop. In another development, Iran's president says Israel killed intelligence minister Ismail Khatib in an overnight strike. This was earlier announced by Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz. The United States Central Command also released video footage showing what it described as strikes on Iranian military targets.
Hossein Degan has been appointed as the new secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, according to local media reports. He replaces Ali Larijani, who was killed in an Israeli airstrike in Tehran earlier this week, a death later confirmed by Iranian officials. Degan previously served as Iran's defense minister from 2013 to 2017 and has held several senior roles, including vice president and a commander in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Iran has dismissed reports of cross-border incidents against Azerbaijan and warned against external attempts to undermine relations between the two neighbors. In exclusive interviews with A News, our correspondent Tura Shiralilu spoke with Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson and Minister of Cultural Heritage. Let's see more from that interview.
Iran and the Republic of Azerbaijan have many things in common. We have historical, religious, civilizational, cultural ties. And it is only natural for both of us to care for the continuation and strengthening of our bilateral relations based on mutual respects and mutual interest. That's the principal policy of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Both countries at the same time have to be very careful because there are certain adversaries who do not want to see these friendly relations to be further strengthened and developed. In recent days, for instance, you have heard the rumors or news that there was one drone or missile launched from Iran to a part of territory of the Republic of Azerbaijan. But since we attach high importance to the mutual trust between the two countries, our officials at the highest level intervened. There were very constructive talks between the two presidents with a view to removing any sort of misunderstanding between the two states.
Iran and Azerbaijan share cultural and civilizational heritage, including Nowruz. We were going to celebrate Nowruz festivities in Tehran in coming days, but the imposed US-Israel war prevented us from hosting the countries which commemorate this occasion. Devastation of Iran's civilizational works and monuments equals destruction of such historical and cultural works in the neighboring countries, which share them with Iran. I would like to take this opportunity to express our gratitude to the people and statesmen of the Republic of Azerbaijan, notably President Ilham Aliyev, for expressing their condolences over the martyrdom of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei, as well as for sending a message of congratulations on the election of the new leader. In addition to our nations, our leaders President Masoud Pezeshkian and President Ilham Aliyev have established our bilateral ties at regional level. Enemies have been trying to drive a wedge in the friendship of our peoples and governments. However, the sincere and close relations of our presidents foiled their plots.
Elsewhere, the European Union and Iceland have signed a new security and defense partnership aiming to strengthen cooperation on issues from maritime security to cyber resilience. Iceland's foreign minister says the country could join the European Union as early as 2028, with a referendum planned on restarting membership talks.
The European Union and Iceland formalized a new phase in their relationship on Wednesday, signing a security and defense partnership that officials say will deepen strategic cooperation across a range of sectors, from maritime security to the protection of critical infrastructure.
Today's decision is driven by the simple but powerful reality our security shared, and also our challenges are shared. From Russian threats to the seabed infrastructure to China's growing interest in the Arctic, addressing these together gives us great leverage. And this new partnership will deepen our cooperation in areas that matter to our citizens, that matter to the safety of our citizens, from maritime security and protection of critical infrastructure to strengthening resilience against cyber threats.
During the visit to Brussels, Iceland's foreign minister told that her country could join the European Union as early as 2028, adding that she expects fisheries and agriculture to be the toughest points of negotiation with the bloc. The Icelandic government has proposed holding a referendum on August 29th on resuming EU membership negotiations, a process Reykjavik abandoned in 2013.
Saying a yes, it opens doors, it opens possibilities, and instead of saying no, from my point of view, you are closing doors, and there is not so much security you can offer by saying no. But in the end, as I said, it's up to the Icelandic people to decide, and I hope they will say yes.
The reason why Iceland stopped the process in 2013 was widespread public opposition, disputes over fishing rights, a swift economic recovery without the euro, and the Eurozone crisis, which made the EU less attractive. The Nordic country is a founding member of NATO and is already part of the European single market and the Schengen open border travel zone.
Here in Azerbaijan, the Baku State University has reopened its Azerbaijan-Korea Computer Science Center, aimed at strengthening digital education and international cooperation, with support from the South Korean Embassy in Baku. A News' Rukaya Bashamak reports.
Right now, right here, we are at Baku State University, where people are starting to gather for the official reopening of the Azerbaijan-Korea Computer Science Center, a center focused on technology and digital education in partnership with South Korea. From students to academics and international representatives, at least around 70 people have come to attend to this event, from faculty members and from the South Korean Embassy in Azerbaijan.
The event began with opening remarks from the university's rector, Elchin Babayev, and South Korea's ambassador to Azerbaijan, Kang Kim-gu. Guests were then invited to tour the upgraded centre, where the facility has been fully modernised and equipped with advanced technologies designed to give students hands-on experience.
I'm really happy. Actually, it's much better and much better than I have imagined. And then because it's our third time to upgrade this center, and then it was so surprising, amazing. And then I hope all students and all people who are studying and use this center will be reborn as a good scientist.
We will be focusing in three major areas, and the first one is being cybersecurity. Another one is artificial intelligence, and for us the most important is cryptography, because in this area we need to do much more. We need a lot of specialists in these important areas. So we will do our best, and of course we are open for international collaboration and also for domestic collaboration.
Updated IT training labs, seminar rooms and internet lounges, all designed to take students and professionals' educational journey to the next level.
I believe that the opening of this centre creates many opportunities for students, allowing them to come here and develop themselves throughout the learning process.
The centre also includes specialised cybersecurity systems such as firewalls and a SIEM platform, as well as artificial intelligence tools used to monitor and analyse security threats in real time. This reopening reflects Azerbaijan's wider push towards digital development, with highlighting growing international cooperation to prepare a new generation for the global market.
Let's take a look at some more regional stories now. There's cautious optimism this Eid as Afghanistan and Pakistan announce a temporary halt in military operations after weeks of rising tensions. The pause was brokered with support from regional partners. A News' correspondent Tamim Bahis reports from Kabul.
As Afghans celebrate Eid, there's at least some relief here in Kabul, as a pause in the conflict between Afghanistan and Pakistan offers a brief respite during the festive period. Both countries have agreed to briefly suspend military operations, marking a significant development after a month of escalating tensions. Afghanistan's government spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid confirmed that Afghan security forces will halt their defensive operations during Eid, also acknowledging mediation efforts by Saudi Arabia, Qatar and Turkey. Mujahid emphasized that while the pause reflects goodwill, Afghanistan remains committed to defending its sovereignty and will respond decisively to any threats. On the other side, Pakistan's Information Minister Ataullah Tahir announced a similar move, suspending military operations until March 24. However, Pakistan has made it clear that any cross-border or terrorist activity will trigger an immediate and intensified military response. The temporary ceasefire offers a brief respite for civilians on both sides, though deep mistrust remains. Islamabad continues to accuse Kabul of harboring militants, claim Afghanistan strongly denies. For now, the focus shifts to Eid celebration, with hopes that this short pause could open the door for long-term de-escalation. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
A sharp escalation in fighting between Israel and Hezbollah has left civilians dead and intensified violence across the region, with missile strikes, air raids and ground clashes reported in and around Jerusalem.
Four Palestinian women died as a result of Iranian missile strike in West Bank. Also, a cluster bombs killed foreign worker here in Israel after sirens were activated 6 times overnight. Hezbollah launched a barrage of dozens of rockets at northern Israel, but also towards Gaza border. Israel stepped up airstrikes on Beirut, killing at least 10 people and destroying a 10-story building near the city center in the third week of its war with Iran-backed Hezbollah. In a further escalation, Israeli warplanes begin striking bridges over the Litani River that link southern Lebanon to the rest of the country, destroying at least 2 of them, regarding Lebanese state media. The Israeli military wants to prevent Hezbollah transferring fighters and weapons and reiterated a warning for residents to leave the south. Hezbollah strikes 6 Israeli tanks, inflicts heavy casualties on invading troops in South Lebanon. Residents were urged to move north immediately to avoid being carried in active combat zones.
Thank you for watching this show. I'm Andy Miocz, filling in for Guy Schoen. From all of us here at A News, have a really nice evening.